All right, we've reached the final section of Chapter 4. So we're going to talk about life in East Asia today. And I've left out the webcam so that'll make it a little bit easier to see just all the slides. I know that's been a little bit difficult for some students. So kind of read through those things there. One of the first things we're going to talk about is just the population of East Asia is extremely high. And we're going to probably look at this a little bit closer. I have a friend that has lived in China, and just that's one of the big things that she kept talking about is just how crowded it really is. So just the cities are very crowded. Here we can see East Asia's population pyramid. We don't see I mean, it's kind of all over the place a little bit. This is all the countries combined together. But there is definitely a kind of a pyramid shape here towards the top. So we can see that there is some bit of a population expansion happening there. One of the things that comes up frequently, specifically about China, is that China in the 1970s began to try to limit its population growth. And it did this by instituting a policy that families could only have one child. And then they changed this in 2015 that they could have two children. Um, and I think we as Americans often interpret that they would kill the other children if they would have more. And I don't really think that that's really what would happen. But, violating those laws might result in a fine or something. And I think the law was really fairly flexible and to some degree. So I don't want you to get the idea that, the Chinese were trying to kill off people, but that's not really what was happening. But they were realizing the population was growing too fast and then made some decisions to restrict family size. The population in 2010 was 1.37 billion people, and that just is massive considering there's only about around 6.5, 7 billion people on Earth. But with this, not all countries in East Asia are experiencing that same thing. So in Japan, there is a low birth rate. And I was just looking up some reasons why that would be. Some of it was due to the stability of jobs and unemployment. I think some of it was also due to just young people not wanting to get married, start families. They were focusing on their careers or other things, and so the population um, has declined to some degree. And nearly 1/4 of the Japanese population is 65 years or older. So the population is kind of aging up, which is kind of an interesting statistic that there's so many older people like that. And that if that trend continues, it could be dangerous because there would be a shortage of people that are working age. Usually by the time someone's the age 65, they'll be retiring or getting close to it. So it could be a difficult situation Japan could find themselves in. So as I already said, many of these places in East Asia, specifically China, are very, very crowded. Nearly 50% of China's people live in cities. The city of Shanghai has 11 million people. Beijing has 7 million people. Hong Kong has more than 5 million people. So we're dealing, and there's plenty of other cities that are very, very large like this that you have never even heard of before. So those are just probably the most common cities that we have heard of. Urbanization is also a part of Japan, so 2/3 of Japanese people live in cities as well. Um, Tokyo, and this is kind of like the greater Tokyo area, so including all the areas kind of surrounding it, makes up 32 million people, which is just enormous. Um, South Korea is also fairly urban, so we're just seeing that trend. The capital, Seoul, has 10 million people. This kind of breaks down the various ethnic groups. So you can see that, most of Japan is Japanese. Most of Korea is Korean. Mongolian. With Chinese, there are broken into a couple of different groups, but most people, 92%, claim to be Han Chinese, a particular type of Chinese person. So there's also minority groups Um, Other places, like I know Japan has a minority group as well that kind of lives on one of the islands. Um, so these are the ethnic groups and then what they speak. So mainly languages of Japanese, Korean, and then Mandarin Chinese are spoken. So as far as religion and the arts, Buddhism is practiced. We will talk more about Buddhism when we get to the country of India, and we'll talk about who the Buddha was and kind of the themes of that religion. Shintoism is also practiced. Christianity is practiced as well. You'll see in the slide here that there's plenty of people that are just not religious at all. Um, Many homes will have shrines. So this is a Buddhist shrine here. One of the keys of Buddhism is reaching what is called enlightenment. So these shrines are kind of representing, and the colors representing that people can attain this in state in Buddhism. But as I already said, many people are not religious. In fact, in Korea, religion is not practiced publicly. It's seen as kind of a no place in communist country, as a threat in many ways. So in those places, there's no really documented numbers of religious people because people cannot practice those publicly. Arts have always been important, including like Chinese pottery down here. The next couple of slides talk about calligraphy and Japanese poetry of haiku, of also very popular. That's more about the calligraphy. Some of the things that you're well aware of, I'm sure. We got Pikachu up here. So anime that's come out of Japan is popular, and then really popular here in the United States. And then K-pop music originated in South Korea. So, kind of some ways that East Asia has really influenced the Americas greatly. Our country, because those are both things that are around us here. Just a little bit more. Hello Kitty is a type of anime that exists, and some of those things have even appeared in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. This might be a little bit surprising to you, but American baseball is extremely popular in Japan, and I think has been for a while. In fact, some Japanese players eventually come and play in the major leagues here in the United States. In China, one of the most popular sports is basketball, and even the same way, some Chinese players have come to play in the NBA here in the United States. Just this focus on education and success is a really big theme in many East Asian cultures. Teachers are highly respected. Children are taught and expected to work hard and just like not give up at tasks. And that just is really reflected across many of the Asian countries that we're covering. You might be somewhat familiar with Asian food. We got pictures of sushi up here. We got some dumplings over here. Some of the things maybe a little bit more unusual. You're going to see something maybe like this at your local Chinese buffet. But we may be more familiar with the types of food that, at least somewhat familiar with the foods here in this region, whereas maybe, in Africa, maybe we're less familiar with like African style of cooking. So we obviously know that rice is a big focus, but noodles are as well. Rice can be made actually into noodles. So there's rice noodles that are popular. This is kind of an interesting video. We might watch this in class. Just talking about chopsticks. I learned some cool things from this video, that even like the Korean, the Chinese, and the Japanese people have different like styles of chopsticks. I wasn't aware of that. So kind of a cool video. That talks about chopsticks. Some current issues, we've already talked about the population growth. Because population is extremely high, that makes pollution a common problem. So coal burning power plants, the number of cars. These people are wearing masks here, and I don't think that's because of COVID. They're wearing masks because of the population, or because of the pollution, and the air is not safe to breathe. So we can also have a lot of trash going in landfills. So that can be a big problem. I think actually this picture here is from the earthquake in Japan. We've talked about some of those natural disasters before. and just how devastating they can be. We'll skip past that one. One thing that's also interesting, we know that we receive a lot of things from China, but because we import more from China than we export to them, we have something called a trade deficit. And so that's that unequal balance of trade, that it's not equal, that we are taking more from their country than we are able to push out to them. And you can see just that trade deficit has been at least $80 billion since 2001, and it's really kind of steadily increased over the 10-year period of time that's listed there. So we've already talked about population growth, political differences that sometimes create issues. Japan has had some disputes with Russia. North Korea's efforts to build nuclear weapons. We'll talk more about that specifically in class, and just the kind of the threat that is to the world. This video right here on the right kind of deals with that, and then the video on the left deals with Taiwan and China's tensions with each other. The fact that they both kind of claim to be China. We got the People's Republic of China here and the Republic of China here, so that's a little bit confusing, but just lots of tensions in the world. So I really want to spend some time talking about life in Korea. I think you might be a little bit shocked at just the lack of freedom that exists for people, because not only because of communism, because China is a communist country, but really more so because of the dictatorship that exists there, and just the authoritarian government that exists. But East Asia has a lot going for it. There's a lot we are covering in this area of the world. And we will do more of that in class. Thanks for watching.